I'm thrilled to be here live in virtual space with Coach Mike Krzyzewski. And it is an enormous privilege for our community to have some time to hear from him. In my opinion, he is the greatest of all time as a coach, but as a leader, he's even better. He's someone who constantly learns, he constantly evolves, and he has deep insights as a consequence into the human condition because I think fundamentally he deeply cares about other people. So, Coach K, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Bill, thank you. This is a time of the year that I've always looked forward to speaking to the students over in Fuqua. You can see I'm camping out. I got an early start for next year. I want to make sure I get into Cameron, and Bill's already in Cameron.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've ever been up in this part of Cameron, but this is where my seats are. Second to the last row in the end zone. So, but it's a great view of those banners.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, and I can tell you over the last couple decades, although I've been at Duke for 40 years, over the last a little bit over 2 decades, I've really enjoyed my relationship with Fuqua. We wanted towards in the 1990s, we had a lot of success, and we felt we needed to get better. How do we get better? And we teamed up with Fuqua, and it's been a great partnership.
And certainly, we feel like we've benefited enormously. So I will say it's fantastic to see you. You never know what you're going to see when you see someone who's been sheltering in place. I noticed that Coach Cutcliffe, for example, has grown a beard. I'm actually happy that you don't have a beard. Did he lose a bet with you by any chance, or?
One of the things I felt that I needed to do during this time was to maintain a schedule and to actually get up the normal time I get up, to do certain things, to shower, shave, to actually put on decent clothes and try to have a schedule during the day where there's some workouts. We have a lot of land. We live right next to the Duke Forest, so I have a beautiful yellow lab that we go walking, and I do my walks, and I have conferences with my staff and good thinking time. So no beard. I could grow one, but I don't. Who would want to cover up this big nose and take away from those big ears of mine? I don't want to be have anyone distracted from those.
So I offered to our students that I'd shave mine off to raise money for a good cause, and apparently the thought was so horrifying that there were no takers. But anyway, so you've been keeping very busy,
Right.
and among other things, you've got your own show, and you recently had Dr. Fauci on as a guest. And did you find it reassuring to have someone like Dr. Fauci kind of leading the charge against COVID-19, and who you subsequently labeled as America's point guard?
Well, it was an honor. We've had our Sirius XM show on for 15 years, and for 26 weeks, usually during the basketball season and a little bit after. But we bring in really top people, not just sports figures. It could be Belichick, it could be Roger Federer, it could be a player. And sometimes you go outside. It's called Beyond Basketball and Beyond. And we really went beyond our level with getting Dr. Fauci on. And he was the only guest. We usually have two. And what a humble man. When you have someone who is the best in the country as far as infectious diseases are concerned, and somebody who can be so instinctive in that area and has dedicated his life of really over 50 years to it, that it was phenomenal. And I tried to get him, because he was a point guard growing up in Brooklyn. I tried to use basketball as a way for him to explain some things so I would understand it better. And he was terrific. It was a great honor, and he's believable, obviously.
So like any good point guard, he's calling the plays, and yet we have city officials, state officials, and federal officials who all seem to be trying to run their own plays, and yet he doesn't seem to get frustrated. He keeps focused.
Well, he's kept focused his whole life. You don't become a research scientist by gazing around. You do it by being right on target. And really, for Dr. Fauci and the top scientists in the country, basically, as we're attacking this, they're our key players. And if you're coaching them, you got to take advantage of how you use them and what impact do they have on the total number of players. That's you, me, everybody, and how they impact on the warriors, the heroes during this pandemic, the healthcare providers, and first responders. And what we found, there are other heroes in the grocery chain people, the people who do all the deliveries. This is an incredible time to realize the value of others, instead of just entertainers, sports figures. The real valuable people, and we've seen that happen. We have a lot of heroes out there.
It's inspiring to see the number of people who stepped up, who may not have even been visible before, but make such a difference in society. So I want to switch to the topic of basketball and really at the same time talk about life and COVID-19. You've been in this business for a long time, and you experienced something this year that you've never seen before. And I'm wondering if you can walk us through the decision for Duke to pull out of the ACC tournament and how you handled that with your team. And of course, one might argue that there was a domino effect after that led to the cancellation of the NCAA tournament and so on. So how did you manage that process with your team?
Well, when we had a great last week of the regular season, we beat NC State, North Carolina, and we found a new star from Fuqua, Justin Robinson. Cassius Stanley had gone to another level. We were healthy, and we were a together group the whole year. But then, this virus hit, and no one knew what impact it would have. And so we're getting ready to go to Greensboro, but we're supposed to play on Thursday. And even on Monday, I knew something was happening here. We have a great president in Vince Price, and we had already put out that students couldn't come back. And I started wondering, why were we, if you're not letting anyone come back, why are we going out to play a basketball game? Like that didn't make sense. And so I started talking to my team about it just to get a feel, because I wanted to make sure that they were into it, and they were. We actually got into Greensboro on a Wednesday night, and that was the night that Rudy Gobert from the Jazz, he tested positive, and I found out about 11 o'clock at night, and I knew the world changed. Like, that was going to be it. I mean, if it's the NBA does that, we need to do it. And the next morning, Bill, we were going to play at 2:30. We had an early breakfast. And before having the breakfast, I got my guys sit down. I said, "How do you feel?" And you could see that there was something wrong. And they were, I said, "Are you afraid?" And they shook their heads. Yeah. And Trey Jones and a couple of kids said, "We feel vulnerable." And I said, "Well, let's talk about it." And so we talked a little bit more. I said, "Well, you guys go eat breakfast." I said, you don't want to play, right? And they said, "No." And I said, "You shouldn't have to play, and I don't want you to play, but let's get some more information about this." So I called my AD, and And I got in touch with President Price, and President Price was getting ready to make a decision to stop all of spring athletics and do it. So it's kind of like we came together at the same time. And then he was going to call the other presidents, and all of a sudden it went like crazy. I asked him, I went back to my team and I said, you know, when you give this up, you're also giving up the NCAA tournament, although I don't think it's going to be played. And then that shocked them, because if you're 18, 19, 20, you know, I'm giving this up, you mean I'm giving that up too? And so I said, listen, let's sit for a while. I'm going to talk to President Price again. And before I even talked to President Price again, I'd gone up to my suite. My captains came up and they knocked on my door and said, Coach, we're not going to play. You know, we don't want to play. I said, good. I agree with that. And I talked to President Price. I said, you know, if you could put in a statement that, you know, all of athletes, and we're not going to play in the tournament for the foreseeable future, just in case, because we didn't have our arms around this yet. In a month, could they play the NCAA? I don't know that. I don't think so. But our guys needed to hear foreseeable future. And when they heard that, we were good. And I got all the parents together. We were trying to already keep, social distancing. And I said, we'll go back. You know, we'll take care of them. And for the next 3 days, everything changed every other hour.
Yeah.
And every other hour. But that's how that rippling effect, and it was happening with conferences all over the country. So, but we have a great leader in Vince Price, and he took the lead in this.
So as I hear how that played out, the number one priority was the health and safety of your players and
Right.
and your team.
Always, always.
And having said that, having made that choice did lead to an enormous sense of disappointment, I have to believe,
Right.
on the part of your players, that essentially, you missed the chance to win two championships, the ACC championship and the national championship. And I want to give you a chance to talk about what you did for your whole team, but I first want to start with talking about some individual players who were, in my opinion, slightly different position. First, Trey Jones, who made a decision to come back, and made a decision to come back to develop his leadership capability, to develop his basketball skills, and he demonstrated that many, many times over the course of the season, how much he had grown. And yet he also came back for an opportunity to win a national championship. Right. So what do you say to someone like Trey to take away the sting of this lost opportunity? And then the second person you've already mentioned, which is Justin Robinson, where J-Rob, after working his whole life to put himself in a position to be someone who would contribute significantly to the team, he's there, and right when he's there, it's pulled away. So what do you say to these guys in terms of taking away the sting of that disappointment?
Well, you always tell them the truth, and you don't say the same things to each player. I think there's two things you do. One, you do things as a group to get some level of closure, and that doesn't just happen with one event. And then you do individual things, and you are not the only one who does it. Each member of my staff, we have talked individually to each of these young men, and then we've talked collectively. And our team was really close. This is one of the closest teams I had, and they, you know what? More than anything, they didn't miss the individual. I'm sure they missed the individual opportunity of doing what they thought they wanted to do and dreamed of. But more than that, they missed each other. They were not into themselves. They were into each other. It was actually kind of beautiful. It's as much as I love my team going into this, I love them more in how they reacted to all of it. And it wasn't about what about me. And usually at the end of a season, you go from we to me real quick. Guys are going pro, transferring, testing the waters and all that. There was no me. Wow. It was great. I'm 73 and done this 45 years. And all of a sudden I see this human quality and that's at such a high level in all these guys. And, Trey's going to be a pro. J-Rob, Justin Robinson, 5th year Fuqua student, he was going to start in the ACC tournament. He's going to be a starter at the end. And he wasn't concerned about himself. I'm telling you, it's crazy good. Just so darn good. I get a little bit emotional because at 18 to 23, I don't know if I would have acted that way. And a lot of times these kids, they surprise you because they do things that you probably wouldn't have done, or at the level that they, I know talent-wise, I could never do what Trey or Zion and these guys do, but people-wise, a lot. I hope the students are experiencing some of that as they're people who are not going to come back, right?
That's right. So this is like our graduating students.
Yeah.
They've got the sense of it's incomplete.
Yeah, and then the others are wondering what they're going to come back to, but as you're wondering all that, you need to take care of one another. There needs to be some level of closure, and our guys, we got them on group chats. They're still, hopefully they're completing their academic requirements, but they also have our staff sets up different games. They have their own thing, video games, and then I've gotten back to each one of them and stay in touch to make sure they're on track for their individual goals.
So focusing on the entire team,
Yeah.
and this question of how do you get closure, can you tell us what you did with your team to get that sense of, we did do something amazing this year?
Yeah, some of it is that in those individual talks, but if just a few things that we did. We came back on that Thursday from Greensboro, and I thought I might be able to keep them on campus, quarantined and all that, and it just changed. And we found out that by Monday, Sunday, they had to be gone. So on Saturday, we had a team dinner just with our staff. We did it the right way. And during the dinner, we had a run of a lot of things that we put on social media. So they showed a lot of their highlights and interviews and all that. But at the end, I got them together and we have the best social media in college sports, basketball or football. And they put together an unbelievable video with One Shining Moment being played. That's the song. And it's played if you win the national championship. And, we've heard it 5 times where we were the ones looking up and it was ours. And so on that Saturday night, we tried to do that with them. Okay. Then they went home, we're tracking them, getting them going. And all of a sudden, a week and a half ago would have been the Final Four. So on that Saturday, it would have been in Atlanta, the 4 teams that are playing, it's the best day in basketball because you have 4 champions getting under one roof with 70-something thousand people and whatever. And 2 of them will move on to the national championship. On that day, it took a while, but I FaceTimed each of my players individually and had a pretty good talk with each one of them and told them, you were worthy of being here. We could have, and I want you to imagine that today you would have been here. And then I thanked them, and we had really good talks. And then Monday came, and our staff, I meet with my staff on Zoom every morning to go over a bunch of things. And I said, we need to do something special for tonight. And so we had the idea of having everybody on the team on Zoom at 8:45. That would have been when they had just come back the last time from warming up, and they were getting ready to go on the court. And I got them all there, and they're, fooling around with one another. I said, okay, let's stop. I said, I need for you guys to concentrate on 3 words. The very first word is imagination. The second word is moment. And the third word is dream. And I said, you got it? Imagination, moment, dream. And now they were quiet. I said, I want you to imagine. I get chills thinking of it because it's great. And I wish it would have happened, but we're imagining, so it did happen. And I said, imagine you've just come back from your warm up. You've warmed up in front of tens of thousands of people. There are 30 million people getting ready to watch you. And, and you're in a position now where a member of my staff usually goes through the final lineup real quick. And then I said, so imagine we've gone through our opponent's lineup, and now I'm talking to you just before you go out. And then I actually got in a coat and tie. I usually wear a couple medals on, and I got in character. And so I told him, I said, look, this is what we dream about. This is what we've worked for. And again, imagine this now. I said, you had incredible moments throughout as we were chasing our dream. The Kansas game to start out. We won a championship in Madison Square Garden in November. The regular season, the last week, the 2 last games, you won 25 regular season games. And then we went to Greensboro. I mean, the moment of the season was unbelievable. Then we go to Greensboro, and you guys won 3 straight. I mean, you were terrific, and we were ACC champs. And then we go to the NCAA tournament, and those first 2 games, you were still running from the ACC tournament. We just went through them. But then the Sweet 16, and it hit us, and we had a moment. You needed 1 stop, and then we had to hit 1 free throw. And you know what? You made the stop, and you hit the free throw. And we got to the Elite 8, and if we win, we go to the Final 4. And another moment occurred. We're 8 points down at the 4-minute timeout, 4 minutes to go. Who would have thought? You would have thought. We would have thought. We're chasing our dream, man. We need another moment. Need another moment. And you did it. And on Saturday, you were unbelievable. Forget about 24-point win. And now we're in this moment. But you know what? We're no longer chasing a dream. I'm going to start crying here. Tonight, we're going to capture the dream. You've had your moments. You're ready to do this. Let's be national champs. And then we do a thing where we put our fists in 5 guys playing as one, and we put it together. Since then, with healthcare providers, when I've talked to them, I said, play as one, put it right here, right on your heart. And then, boom, they went. And then about 2 hours later, we had our social media people put together in those banners that you see behind Coach behind Dean.
I've been promoted.
I hate to insult you.
I've been promoted.
You've been demoted. And but they had a banner made, National Champs 2020. And I just put a short note. I said, you captured your dreams. Keep dreaming, keep chasing, and capture more. And so that was the closure, some of the closure things we tried to do. And my staff has done individual things with them. But again, I'm a little bit emotional after doing it because I love this group.
I'm ready to suit up. I'm not going to help you, but I'm ready to suit up.
Don't go that far. We'll
And
just
I
take
was,
J-Rob. We'll just take J-Rob from Fuqua. All right.
yes. But I would like one of those banners to add into my picture here
Yeah.
for the background. So that's just an extraordinary story in terms of how you help bring closure in terms of what people miss, the opportunities that they miss to give them a chance to live that. If I transition, I try to talk about some of your players who were this is their last year,
Right.
and that's like our graduates. But now you've also got a bunch of your players who will be with you next year, and that's like the students we have the first years who are coming back. And so, in this current environment, how do you build next year's team when summer is so important to you, and when you're going to have so many new players to integrate into your existing team? How's that going to work?
Yeah, well, we would normally try to transition that, but we would be with them. And basically, Jordan Goldwire, Joey Baker, Matthew Hurt, Wendell Moore. Those are our only 4 scholarship players coming back. Our walk-ons, Mike Buckmeyer, Keenan Worthington, my grandson, Michael Savarino. You know, we've met with them and talked to them about how are they going to interact with the 7 new guys we have. So those 7 guys, the veterans, they're on group chats. We already talked about how they're going to live together, you know, roommates, stuff like that. And then we've also talked to the group of 6 freshmen and 1 grad transfer. And they're talking, the 6 freshmen have been talking incoming the whole year. We started that about 4 or 5 years ago, so we could transition quicker. And I said, we'll get Patrick, you know, he's the grad transfer from Columbia, get him in that. And now we've been incorporating all of them. And so they get to know one another. In fact, this afternoon, you know, Joey Baker just checked in. Yeah, he had an academic meeting with our academic advisor. And he said, just thinking about you, coach, and thinking about next year. And so we had a good talk about him being a leader. I said, you and Jordan Goldwire are going to be the 2 oldest guys on the team. How the heck did that happen, huh? And he said, I'm ready. I said, well, being that leader will make you a better player. And then we talked about him as a player. And it's just try to keep in touch. The thing we're worried about is when school is over, May and June. Right now, they have some level of structure. Now, what will happen when they do not have the academic component? And the NCAA is behind times as far as providing us access, how much we can, you know, we can give a kid a workout and whatever, but we can't watch them work out. It's crazy, right? And I'd like to, you know, actually I've been in touch with our compliance people, and I'm going to call the NCAA tomorrow, the head guy, and say, look, you need to change your rules about access, how much time we can, because I worry about not just the physical health of my guys, but the mental health. Mm-hmm. You know, like we need to touch them. And then we don't, the other aspect about this is there's the unknown, just like for the students coming back. How will Fuqua be in the fall? You don't know that yet. I don't know how Duke will be. So you're trying to work with them where you don't really know what's going to happen. But the constant touch, FaceTime is big. I don't expect you to FaceTime with all the MBA students, but I have a small team, so I can do that. So that interaction where they know they're important, they know we care, and then if we can have a little bit more where we can help them develop during this time.
So, switching gears to not this year's team, but last year's team and Zion Mania.
Mhm.
Duke basketball always gets incredible attention, but last year was off the charts. How did you keep that team together, and keep the egos working with one another, when one person among a set of really great players was getting just so much attention? And I know you've never been afraid of big egos, but how do you harness those big egos to the team?
Well, Zion, as big as he is and as good as he is, the biggest thing about him is humility. He he's a really good guy. Like he's funny, he's smart. It doesn't have to be about him. And the dynamic of he and RJ together, because coming in based on what so-called experts say, RJ was the top guy. And obviously he's the third pick in the draft. He's pretty good. But Zion became the guy. And the relationship of those two guys together, and RJ never showing one little bit of jealousy or whatever. And they interacted so well with our upper class. There wasn't like if you were at a team meal, you wouldn't know what class guys were in. They interacted. They're good guys, Bill. I didn't have to do much at all. Their personalities were unbelievable. That's why when these guys went to the pros, I know a bunch of the people with the Pelicans. I said, you don't know, you're getting a great player. You don't know how good of a human being you're getting. And so it was not hard. And, Zion didn't want the spotlight. The spotlight always sought him. And a lot of times he would bring somebody in. Actually, Buckmeyer became his spotlight buddy, and things like that. And they had a lot of fun together. A lot of things have to happen right to win, and, I'll always remember the blown out shoe and the 3.5 weeks he couldn't play. And we were never able to get to the level. That doesn't mean we're going to win, but we would have had a better shot. That group was deserving of winning. And because they were, I had never had a problem with them, and so in any group, when the most talented one or two people are really good people, there's a thing that a leader can't do. They get it done. Now I would remind them that they're doing it and talk to them about certain, but never to complain or you're not doing this, but maybe add to it. Like, you don't even know you have this quality. Really, sometimes a talented person doesn't know they have other strong qualities, these people things that, they're false. I call them force multipliers. And Zion has that. Zion has it. Whatever it is, he has it.
So you were doing an interview, I think it was last week, where you started talking about some of the great players in history who had it.
Right.
And one of the things that you mentioned is really a part of having it is being very, very smart.
Smart.
And being not just intelligent, but smart in the moment, and being able to make your team better in the moment. In that same interview, you talked about Christian Laettner and said that Christian Laettner is the best player from Duke at Duke during your time as coach. And you talked about how smart he was in the moment. If you could pick one player who you feel like in that moment, who would it be in terms of being smart in the moment? And maybe you should tell people a little bit about what it means to you to be smart in the moment.
Right. Being smart in the moment, You can be smart in a test. You can be smart after commentators now are smart after something has already happened. Not necessarily smart, but they have opinions. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. But for me, I can be smart, but I'm not in the moment. In other words, there's a timeout, I might yell an instruction or whatever. But if you have a player on the court who, while the action is going on, can instinctively react and get the group to take advantage of the moment right there. There's another moment. There's another, and in our sport, there are more moments because it's not baseball. You have time in between innings, pitches, football, nothing against that. I love their play, and then you have time. Basketball, being in that moment. And guys, I've been fortunate to be able to have had the opportunity to coach some great players because of 11 years with the U.S. team. And two of the guys on that team, LeBron has that. Kobe had that. At Duke, Leitner had that. And he had the courage and the talent to go along with it. Battier had that, just to give a couple. And they win because of their instinctive ability to react positively at that moment. And I call it having also the courage to follow your instincts in that moment. Actually, courage is such an important part. It's an important value in any group because, do you have the courage to say what needs to be said at that moment? Or do you walk out of a room and say, man, they should have done this? Well, you should have said it right then. And so, these players are able to say it, and I don't give them, they have it. I allow them to follow that. If we lose because you followed I'm okay. But I would tell Trey Jones this year, he was learning to do it. I said, I would like for you to do what you think at the moment. You think everyone thinks the same as you, and they don't. But if you turn think into action right away, other guys will have better action. And, if we had Trey longer, I think he was good at it. But you have those qualities that you see, and they can't be measured by analytics or how fast you are, how much you jump, and how all that. But it's a champion maker. It's a champion maker.
So you're not the one who called those plays that Trey had at the end of the first Carolina game?
That's a great example of it. And this is a cool thing. I mean, that was crazy, that could happen because it wasn't one play. It's crazy when a guy hits a last second shot or what. This is 10 minutes of, I call it, for me, I've been able to I try to be in the moments of my players, and they will take you to places you couldn't do just as the coach. And Trey had one of those. We were all in his darn moment. And if you could feel him on the bench and see it, it was like he was possessed. And even on that darn missed free throw, I mean, for it to even work is crazy. But we put two shooters out there, and when he misses, he's not the guy who should get the ball. But it was like everyone, the Carolina players and the other four Duke players, they were in mud. And this guy, he did it. That's what I mean. It's beautiful. It's unbelievable. And that kid, Yeah, that kid did it. God bless him.
So I'm going to start asking you questions that have been sent in from the audience, and some interesting ones here. So you've talked to us about how you motivate your team and get them through tough times. How do you motivate yourself? How do you keep yourself going when this is a situation with so much uncertainty?
Well, you notice, I don't know if you did notice, or our viewers are know, I get excited trying to motivate someone else. So as a leader, motivate your people and you will put yourself in that moment. And I learned something when I was a cadet at West Point. I learned a lot of things that I couldn't do. And then you learn how to do them. One of the biggest lessons was failure is not your destination. So, like if you get knocked down, you get back up. And the second thing is don't get up alone. So I try not, look, you get down, you get all the human things that, you're a human being, you're going to feel. You can't let that be your dominant emotion. Like I'm supposed to be up. Come on, be up. That's my job. Like no matter what, my responsibility to my group and to me, I got to be my best friend. My best friend shouldn't be down. I sometimes call it right shoulder and left shoulder. The left shoulder sometimes saying, man, you're supposed to be down. The right shoulder said, get the hell out of here. So I want two right shoulders. Like it's not acceptable to be down. And, if you're down, what are you down about? Did you just lose? Did something go wrong or whatever? Okay, you're there. And then you have to figure out whatever you're down, it's an opportunity to get better. But you have to have, you have to have belief in yourself and your unit. You have to have the single biggest thing that is given to each human being, and that's attitude. You are the owner of your attitude. And so if I believe and I own my attitude, that's a cool. Now, the third part of that is preparation. So going through this, I got to believe something good is going to happen with this. That doesn't mean we're not handling bad. Okay. I have to have a great attitude. Now, how am I preparing now? How am I adapting to what's happening now and not bemoan what was? What was will never be. And you can't change what was. So what is going to be and how do we prepare for it? And then once we prepare for it, the last step is execution. And that's how, that's the cycle that I try to stay on.
So related to that, in terms of keeping yourself motivated, you've had an amazing life. You've accomplished so many things, but of course you've had disappointments as well, and things that are really, really hard. And your comment about you look to other people for help when you get knocked down. I remember you telling a story about a really tough loss that you had, and Christian Leitner coming in and saying, "Are you okay, Coach?"
Right.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, if you surround yourself with good people, they can see, a big thing is have each other's back. And a group or people in the group can have the leader's back too. And it's not just Christian Leitner, but I've had a lot of the players, Wojo would do it, Shane Battier, so many of these guys on this team, Trey did it. Even sometimes it comes from a source like J-Rob. Like he's trying to make me better. trying to make me feel better. And so if you as a leader develop that culture where you take care of one another, sometimes the people you're leading see something in you before you've been able to change that attitude. Yeah, you're in the process, and they help you with it, and you have to be acceptant of it. And I've been fortunate not just to be on my Duke team or U.S. teams. I'm on the Krzyzewski team. I have 4 ladies, my wife of 50 years, and my 3 daughters. They won't let you stay down. We won't let each other stay down. No way. And so that's what I learned at being a good team. So in those moments, you aren't alone, even though you feel you're alone. Again, you can have all these, but if you're in a great environment, the environment expects you to beat down, to beat whatever is down. And you have a responsibility to your culture, to your team, but also the culture is helping you. There are people in that culture. It's not, a long time ago when I used to be a micromanager and I got my butt handed to me in the mid-90s, I learned a lot from one of the great men, Duke men ever, one of the great men, and that's Dr. Keith Brody. And he helped me get through some really difficult times. And basically, I was a wheel and there were spokes, and they all had to go through me. And so when I wasn't there, the wheel fell apart. From the mid-90s, I started building our program based on connecting everywhere. So if one person is down for a little bit, we still go. And by the way, you're taking me with you. I'll get there. And so you keep taking each other with you and you win. You win. You make the best out of, winning is making the best out of any situation you're in an ethical way. Yeah, that's what one of the ways I would describe winning.
So I'm getting a bunch of questions here. So here's one. Who are some of the individuals and coaches who've been particularly influential on your leadership development? Same thing could be true for former players who had a strong influence.
I was coached by Bob Knight at West Point. He had an influence on me, but really, I try to watch all kind of leaders. Like I do a lot of speaking for the Washington Speakers Bureau for 25 years. I've had a chance to meet amazing leaders in different industries and see how they react, where they're at in a certain situation, where you do a scouting report on the group and what that man, that woman, whoever is the leader, is thinking at that time. So, to me, leadership is the most interesting thing you can do. And if you shouldn't try to model yourself after one person, because only that person can be that person. But you try to take the good, and if you see bad in somebody, don't take that. But and do it in all walks of life, not just in the walk of life that you're in, because there are tremendous leaders all over the place.
So I mentioned before that one of the hallmarks of your exceptional leadership is your ability to evolve and adapt. How do you manage to stay connected to these players who are getting younger and younger over time as we stay fixed? What's the secret to really being able to make those connections as life is changing?
Well, it's a great question, and this year coaching, when I turned 73 in February, I was 55 years older than Wendell Moore, Vernon Carey, Matthew Hurt, 55, 55 years older. Yeah. And so I've had to change and adapt. And I think it's one of the key things in leadership is where you need to adapt in how you get your message or teach your values to your group. And so how you dress, music, how you talk, different things. I've probably adapted 12, 15 times over the 45 years. And it keeps you young because I need to connect with them. And that's my responsibility, is to connect with them. Now, what I don't adapt to is the values I teach: the integrity, the respect, the courage, the loyalty, the trust, the duty, the selfless service. Those things never change. But how you make the meal, the value meal or the culture, is different. And that's one of the great things about being a leader, is that's exciting, and it keeps you young. Like it's hard for me to believe I'm 73, because I still feel I have the enthusiasm. I never could jump, but I'm not the athlete, obviously, at this time. I got body parts that don't belong to me. They do belong to me. I paid for them, but knees, hips, and whatever. But you know what? I've kept in the world of my players with my mind and with my heart, always, always. And they see that. They see that.
So an annual challenge, and this year has been no different, is when players are making a decision: do they turn pro or do they come back? And this may be my imagination, but it seems like the threshold has changed a little bit, where players are now very willing to go pro and be a second round pick as opposed to being a lottery pick.
Right.
How do you work with them to figure out what's right for them in terms of their development? Because being at Duke and being on your team is an incredible opportunity.
Well, that's the individual journey that each of them is on. Also, you can have a youngster transfer, like Alex O'Connell transfer. And basically, you want to be, we've accepted, we don't usually accept transfers, but we took a graduate transfer from Columbia. And basically, what is best for them? Like when Luke Kennard, as a sophomore, had this breakout year. I mean, unbelievable. He's the only guy who was not injured that year. And he kind of carried us because Tatum was out for 5 weeks and all that. And I can remember he and his dad coming in, what you do? I said, you go pro. You're a 6'6" shooter who could be somewhere between 12 and 20 in the draft. You got to get out of here. Zion, Jason Tatum, who are going to be 1, 2, or 3 picks, they would have loved to stay, but you say, no, you got to go, and then, so you just tell them the truth. And also for a youngster who's trying to figure out, how do I fit in next year? I said, it's tough for me to say how you're going to fit in next year. We have 7 new guys, but this is what you've done. This is what I see. And, you're honest with them. And I never talk a kid out of anything. I'm not trying to sell them on any one thing, but I'll tell them the truth. I tell them the truth about if they're going pro, if they want to know about an agent that they're considering. I'll give them no input or great input, depending on what they want. But the kids coming back, you have to be really honest with them. Like Cassius, Cassius is not a normal freshman. He's older. He's not 18. He's 20. He had a breakout year, and whether he's drafted in the first round or second, he's ready. And he's only going to be a pro you know, 12, 15 years if you're lucky. You know, you gotta strike at this time. And otherwise they look at a guy who's 21 coming out differently. And so, you know, I met with he and his family and I said, you got to go. And they want to go, but they want to stay. So what if it didn't turn? I said, just go. You know, and let's work together. They were terrific. You just be honest with everyone. And we have a new team each year, Bill. And the last, since 2010, when we had three juniors, three seniors and two juniors starting. Are you kidding me?
Not going to see that.
Those were the days, and two of them are on my staff now, Nolan and John, and I have a terrific staff.
Yeah, yeah. So how, given that a season and kind of your engagement in a sport like basketball is going to have its ups and downs.
Sure.
How do you help your teams cultivate resilience? We've talked a lot today about disappointment and overcoming that, but this is, you know, how do you develop this increased ability to bounce back over time?
Yeah, I think that's become more difficult. I don't want to characterize. I hate when they say this group of people or they put them in groups. You know, I think each kid's different, and but resiliency is something that's a little bit tougher now than it was like 10 years ago, and you have to be more. Part of being resilient is not getting down on them. How do you react to losses, poor performance, things like that, where you could be harder, you know, especially 20, 25 years ago, 10 years ago. In fact, my staff, Carol, James, these guys said, Coach, you never said, I said, come on, man. I had you for 4 years. You know, we built up a relation. And they know. And I think you have to tell them the truth in different tones, maybe less words, but be on their side all the time. Sometimes in the past, I would try to be an adversary for a little bit just to develop it. And I don't do that. I did it a little bit this year when we looked like crap against NC State. We should have lost by about 50 points. And so they got a little bit of old school that time, but they can't take old school. The other thing, Bill, is they need to be shown, like on tape, you know, because, you know, like I might explain something on the court, you're doing this, or you didn't do this right. And they're more head nodders. Like, I got it. No, you didn't. You don't until you see it on tape. But instead of trying to destroy them when they watch tape, it's more instructive. And that type of thing.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question, which is you've been very engaged in terms of saying, hey, we need to work together to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. You've been engaged with the healthcare workers, doing all you can to motivate them. How do you pick and choose how you use your platform when you decide to engage in a societal level well beyond Duke and the platform of Duke basketball?
Well, first of all, we recognize that we have a platform, and if you have a platform, you should use it. And how do you use it the best? And so when this broke out, President Price, Michael Schoenfeld, and people got together, and we put out video to all the students, and we put out one to all the healthcare providers. The one to the healthcare providers produced a lot of other things, you know, where there's a hospital in Rochester, there's the nurses association, anyway, and there's things that you do to help motivate. But the platform doesn't have to be just visible to everybody, because there are also phone calls to individuals that people reach out to you. So we try to do it where we're part of the Duke team. And how does Gene Washington at the hospital, how does Vince Price, the president, how do we manage that? And then we go outside of it too, with some shows and different things. And we started using our social media platform to produce content. We started a brotherhood. All our former players are part of what we call the brotherhood. And so we have a brotherhood series, things like that. And I'll continue to investigate it. Like a big thing right now is feeding people. So there's a huge thing out there called Feeding America. And we're involved a little bit now with our local chapters, Central and Eastern North Carolina. And one of our former managers is the CEO of Lineage. It's the biggest cold storage company in the United States. It's an amazing thing. Kevin Marchetti. And Kevin has, with some of the guys on the Brotherhood, done something with Kyrie in New York. And he donates $200,000, and a group of people there try to match it or give. And he's done something in Miami with the Arizons, Nick Arizon, and he's done something in Memphis and New Orleans. And we're about to do it hopefully by this week, to do something like that. So just to kind of use our people, and without fanfare, so people know it's genuine, and you're not standing on your platform saying, "Look at me." If you use your platform, you want to say, "Look at this situation, look at these people," and maybe more people will look at them because they were on your platform. And so that's how we try to do it.
Fantastic. So, Coach, thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, your insights, and being a true role model for all of our students. And so, best wishes for staying healthy and safe during this pandemic.
Yeah. One last thing to those of you who are viewing this, be smart, be safe and be patient, but also be positive. There's a reason you're at Fuqua, because you're smart, you're talented. And although a lot of plans may have been changed, they have been changed. The world has been changed. That's why you're at Fuqua, is to figure it out and try to figure it out together. The best teachers at times in a school are your classmates, and lean on one another. And God bless you. And hopefully for you all who are coming back in the fall, we're here in the fall, and we can get this thing rolling. But please stay safe.